Hey guys, my name is Bando, this is Brexit Bando, and I'm still on this Imperial Guard Steel Legion thing, because I think it's a discussion that some people just aren't understanding. They are hung up on the kind of like GW can't produce another model kit for this same faction kind of mentality, and it's not really that I think people are arguing. Now, you all know the Cadian shock troops, you know the Cadian Guard. Um, these are the ubiquitous standard aesthetic of the Imperial Guard. They're everywhere. These are the template for all other Guard regiments. And they're perfectly serviceable miniatures. They're absolutely fine. You can paint them any colour you want, and you can come up with your background. You know, these guys live on a desert planet, these guys are snow war specialists, that sort of thing. The issue that I feel, certainly I have, that other people have, is that the lack of diversity in the Imperial Guard, and I don't mean diversity in its modern parlance, I mean diversity in the sense of different regimental identities, is that it becomes incredibly bland very quickly. For example, would the Star Wars prequels have been as successful if the clone troopers had just stayed in plain white armour? Probably been quite successful. I doubt it would have tanked them, but it certainly would have had an effect on merchandising. We no longer have any sort of identifiable, markings. The was it 5i First aren't wearing blue anymore. 211th, I can't remember the numbers. It's been a while since I've bothered with Star Wars. It's basically dead to me now, unfortunately. But Obi-Wan's Legion in orange, the Galactic Marines in red and grey, all those things. If they didn't exist, if they were just wearing white armour, yeah, they could have the names, they could have the fluff, they could have the background, but there would have been no way of knowing this. You show a kid a plain white stormtrooper, effectively, and he just goes, it's a clone trooper, it's a stormtrooper, it's one of them. If you show him one in a specific type of armour with yellow markings, and he'd be like, oh, that's the 219th Star Corps. They were fighting on, I don't know, Salust, alongside General Dabby Dabby Doobie. And suddenly you've got the opportunity there for so much more depth. You've got, a tie-in novel. You've got toy ranges. You've got animation episodes. So much more depth, so much more opportunity for expanding the universe, expanding the range of what you've got. And Imperial Guard had that, throughout things. We had regiments like the Praetorians. We had regiments like the Catachan Jungle Fighters, the Attilan Rough Riders, the Cadian Shock Troops, the Valhallan Ice Warriors, the Mordian Iron Guard. These were all things functionally the same thing. But your Catachans were slightly different because they were muscled up veteran warriors who were hard as nails, the toughest men in the galaxy, who literally lived in like a jungle hell world. The Attilan Rough Riders were this horde of Mongol-esque, horse-riding guardsmen who charged tanks with lances with melter bombs strapped to them. The Valhallan Ice Warriors would march through a blizzard just to burn orcs out of their icy, foxholes. It added depth, it added opportunity, it added flavour. And this opportunity isn't just one which we go, yeah, you could buy some more models. Oh yeah, you got some extra data sheets. No, it was the same army. But I still know many people who had multiple Imperial Guard armies because of the different aesthetics. And sure, your meta players, your tournament, guys who just absolutely must play the absolutely most effective army out there probably won't. But frankly, they're going to be reselling your army as soon as you nerf it into the ground and boost the next one. They'll just be selling it to some guy for half price to recoup their losses. They won't probably be painting it, they'll be paying someone else to paint it for them. So they're not particularly going to be, helping your ecosystem survive either. But this flavour is important because it also breeds longevity. And that flavour is why Warhammer has done so well. Why has Warhammer survived where so many other science fiction properties have not? I'll put it to you in the comments. How many of you have heard of Void 1-1? Or Urban War? Or Gaslands? Or I don't know, even Conflict 47 at the moment, Fair few of you have heard of Trench Crusade, but I wonder how many people have heard of Trench Crusade in 5 years. Warhammer sticks around because it's not just a sci-fi property. It has so much more than that. It's why Star Trek is doing so badly at the moment. Star Trek's getting more money pumped into it at the moment than it's ever had. It had more series being worked on at one time than it had ever done. But its popularity has dropped off to nothing. Because it's ignoring what made it popular. The flavour, the style, the attention to detail, the competence of the characters. People wanted that. And just slapping another TV show out there with Star Trek just scribbled above the title doesn't do it. Doesn't the same thing. It's not like a magic button you can press to just drag an audience in. If we made Big Brother and slapped the title Star Wars on it and just threw a bunch of celebrities into a slightly Star Wars looking house and to see what happens for the next 36 weeks while, they sit around in their underwear doing nothing all day, it's not going to attract the majority of Star Wars fans. Because that's not what they're into. And the depth, the variation, because this is a creative hobby, is what allows and incentivizes people's creativity. If my models were pre-painted, I would not be involved in Warhammer beyond probably the age of about 10 years old. Playing the game, I find it difficult because I can't pay attention to it. I find it boring. It's not engaging to me, particularly. The list building, the army building, the modelling, the painting, I absolutely adore. And, coming up with reasons why there are little symbols on my models, why these decals are here, what this warning marker means, what this, this piece of chipping, what caused that. That's the sort of thing that's interesting to me, is telling the environmental storytelling. So if I've got no variation in my models, none of that's available to me. And for example, many of you older guys here, many of you younger guys now as well, will have seen this image. This was a 2-page spread, centerfold spread in the Rogue Trader rulebook, and this was like day dot for Warhammer, basically, for 40k. This is pre-40k. It's not even 40k at this point. And this showed not the first founding chapters, but some of the more prominent Space Marine chapters. You had the Dark Angels, the Flesh Eaters, was that the Flesh Tearers in black, Space Wolves, Ultramarines, White Scars, Blood Angels, Blood Drinkers, Crimson Fists. Even the Imperial Fists aren't even here. Rainbow Warriors, Iron Hands, and Silver Skulls. And it's got like all the different things on here with like their different helmets and what they mean and different symbols that they can wear. And many of these symbols pop up later on throughout 40k lore. Many of these chapters have popped up throughout, 40k lore. Some of them have got interesting backstories. Some of them become really unique. The White Scars are quite identifiable as who they are. The Space Wolves have really changed. The Dark Angels have got a lot of fluff. They've changed colour. The Flesh Tearers too. Blood Angels, Iron Hands, even the Silver Skulls. The Silver Skulls there, they have a whole thing where people believe that they might be the descendants of Dantioch. Lots of interesting fluff here. Now, what if this page had instead had just been an image like this? And this was every depiction of Space Marines. There isn't 13 legions, this is just a 13 on the banner. They're all Ultramarines. Ultramarines are Space Marines. Space Marines are Ultramarines. That's it. There's no Blood Angels, there's no Dark Angels, there's no Black Templars. None of it. None of it. Forge World doesn't come along and give you upgrade sets. There's no extra codexes, there's just Codex Ultramarines. There are no other Primarchs. The Emperor had one son, Rabute Guilliman, and he leads the Legion of the Ultramarines. Well, you get no Horus Heresy. You get no Chaos Space Marines. You get no Badab War. None of it. There's no fluff, there's no depth. And someone might come along and go, what if I flipped the colours? What if I painted them yellow with blue trims? And people would go, no, Space Marines are blue. They're not yellow, they're blue. That's what Space Marines are. Space Marines are blue. You paint them blue. That's it. They're Ultramarines. There's no creativity, there's no expansion, there's no depth there. I'd like you to think, do you think that Warhammer would have become as popular as it is nowadays if Ultramarines were not just the poster boys, they were the only boys? And by lesser extent, maybe there's just Chaos Space Marines. There's no Khorne Berserkers, there's no Death Guard, there's no Thousand Sons, there's no Emperor's Children. You don't get Noise Marines, you don't get Blight Lord Terminators, none of that. It's just Chaos Space Marines. It's just Orcs. There's no different clans. There's no Craftworld Eldar. All Eldar are just, Beltan, painted white and green. Will this universe does it have its depth? No, of course not. Because Warhammer became popular by things like the little paragraph story that told the defense of the Hive City Tertio Reductus by the 8th Company of the Howling Griffins, where they were slaughtered to a man, but finally relieved with only 3 survivors by the 8th, or the 8th Legion, whatever, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean. These tiny little bits that are in White Dwarf and in codexes, they used to be everywhere. They were 500 words at most. Nothing. It was a picture of a helmet, and it was like Mark 7 Aquila pattern helmet of the Blood Angels, worn by Brother Raphael, recovered from the battlefields of Armageddon, M41 221. And you'd be like, that's so cool, what do those numbers mean? What's that helmet? What makes it an Aquila pattern over just a regular Mark 7? And eventually that becomes more detail. Suddenly, we don't just have Space Marines in power armour, we've got Space Marines in power armour that's Mark 6 armour. Corvus pattern Mark 6 armour. All Space Marines have always been in this power armour. This is Space Marine armour, Beaky Boys, that's what they are. Now it's the 6th variant, which means we have 5 ones that came before it. What do they look like? Oh, now this guy's wearing Mark 7 armour, he's chopped the beak off and he's got slightly different shit. He can bend his knees now, that's amazing. What's the difference? Oh, we just throw a little bit in here. The Mark 6 stuff has more advanced sensors inside the beak. Oh, that explains why they've got the beak on them now. And but the You know, the Mark 7's more heavily armoured in places, more advanced power distribution systems, pardon me, and better flexibility around the legs. You know, easier to repair, that sort of thing. Oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, here's a black and white grainy picture of the older armour marks and their explanation of a model that was sculpted back in the 1980s with no intention of it being its own thing. It was just that I'm going to design a Space Marine in a different style. I'm sick and tired of sculpting these helmets all the same. I'm going to give them a slightly different helmet. Oh, well, now we've got fluff for it. And the same thing is there for the Imperial Guard. We have that. We have different pattern lasguns, because they're all made by different factories that partake in different stories. We have different marks of flak armour. We have different variants of tank. Why did Forge World make different variants of the Lehman Russ? We didn't need them. We didn't need Mars pattern Lehman Russes. We didn't need different turrets. We didn't need extra bodies, but we got them, and it became a key part of the aesthetic for armies like the Krieg. We didn't need any of it. And if we just look at it as a pure numbers thing, sure, one kit, absolutely fine. But if you look at it over the long run, is that the smartest business decision? Because, sure, one kit, that's fine. You know, one range of models, we can produce that. People are going to get bored of it pretty quickly, though. And we as hobbyists will chop and change and convert things, and we'll make them how we want them to be. But wouldn't it be better if we didn't have to? I could, you know, chop and change Armageddon Steel Legion out of these Cadians. You know, I could file down the torsos and sculpt on the front of a tunic, and then add the H harness back in for his webbing. I could trim down the helmets, sculpt on gas masks. Every single person. I could trim down, shave down the boots and the legs, and then sculpt up to make knee-high jack boots. Yeah, absolutely fine. I can do it. I shouldn't have to. And there is an opportunity there. I mean, there is an opportunity quite clearly from the sheer amount of backlash, the sheer amount of conversations like this going on, should be a clear enough sign that there is an opportunity there. And Games Workshop's already doing it. That's why we have the Krieg. That's why the Attilan Rough Riders are back in there. That's why Gaunt got his Tanith models. That's why they're all there. GW knows people want these things, but it's all down to do they want it versus do we want to produce it? And what a lot of people don't realise is the main reason that GW doesn't want to do Steel Legion is because they don't want to do Steel Legion. There are some people in the studio who think they're problematic. They think the symbols and the shape and the weapons and what they represent are problematic. And that in itself is a problem. If you don't like conflict, if you don't like wargaming, if you don't like army men, you probably shouldn't work for a company that does that. But things like the symbol, a lightning bolt. A lightning bolt is a symbol of the Imperial Guard. It is the symbol of the Emperor. The Emperor has been associated with lightning bolts forever. In fact, this Cadian banner has 3 of them on the front of it to begin with. You can reclaim that symbol if you believe that it is too similar to someone you don't like. In fact, you can make it so it's so prevalent that people associate it with you first, and then the thing you don't like, they go, oh, that's kind of similar to that symbol. You can take it back. It's not difficult. You have the market share. You control the narrative. You don't have to just go, yeah, these are knockoff bad guys from WW2. They're Armageddon Steel Legion. They're their own thing. You know, those guys didn't wear the Imperial Aquila on their helmets. They wore an eagle, but they didn't wear the Imperial Aquila. They didn't carry laser rifles. They didn't drive around in chimeras. They didn't fight orcs. There is an opportunity there to sell a whole range again. All the people who've got Cadian armies because they wanted a guard army. Every one of those is an opportunity to roll that dice again and get a second bite at the pie. Especially if you get rid of the stupid rules where this regiment is this squad, this regiment is that squad. Just make the old guard platoons like we had in 4th and 3rd edition. So it doesn't matter. So I can buy a Cadian squad if I want Cadians, or I can buy a Krieg squad if I want Krieg. If you foster creativity, people will buy more stuff. If you're worried that your creativity, the freedom, is going to drive people into the arms of your competitors, that is a different conversation, and one that is wholly within your realm to resolve. But I don't think you're quite ready for that conversation. Anyway, my name is Bando. This is Brexit Bando. I love this piece of art, even with its dodgy Primaris ankles. Thanks for watching, and if you've made it all the way to the end, you're pretty based. Thanks guys. Have a great day. Bye bye.